So then, the skeleton for this video was actually started on May 29th when a series of tweets and articles hit the web suggesting that Mendocino was quite a bit weaker than Van Gogh, that it wasn't just some 6nm die shrink of that APU. Now, all the way back then, I took those claims very seriously for a few reasons. As discussed on Broken Silicon, the first reason was that AMD was claiming this was a budget APU, and we already know that Van Gogh is a die size that's actually bigger than Cezanne, and Cezanne isn't exactly known to be in $400 or $500 laptops. Additionally, the APU held by someone at AMD looked smaller than Cezanne. And finally, a third reason that is also very important that was also discussed in that Broken Silicon is that, though I wasn't given any details, a contact of mine at AMD did at least give me a little nudge that this isn't a Van Gogh tweak, that this really was its own project. And of course, since then, we've had many people come out and say that it is indeed quite a bit weaker, just a couple of compute units, and this is backed up by the people that I've reached out to that are my own sources. And so now we know that. And because that wasn't that interesting outside of kind of giving nudges from myself here and there in other videos, I've just found that there's been much more important things to talk about since the end of May, like Arrow Lake, Meteor Lake, all the developments of other upcoming AMD products over the next few years. And so, while I've been digging on things like Dragon Range, Mendocino, and Phoenix for weeks now, none of the things that I've been jotting down really made me feel like I had to rush out a video that would talk about anything that I wasn't already kind of piecemeal throwing out there anyways, or that wasn't going to say anything that we've mostly heard from other leakers already. I didn't see the point in prioritizing a video that for the most part would just be confirming things that mostly other people have already said. But this week, that changed when I finally got a few details on an APU that I haven't seen anyone else talk about up until now, and I find this to be a fantastic opportunity to tell you guys about a product that I believe is very likely going into a beloved PC gaming device, the Steam Deck, or actually I should say, probably the Steam Deck 2. And this also finally presents itself as a great opportunity to have me at least overall confirm what I know about a bunch of other AMD APUs to set the record straight, because a lot of people are just asking me what I think about Phoenix, and well, it's probably time I tell you guys what I can confirm. Now, before I confirm what I can confirm about a whole host of upcoming AMD APUs, including one I haven't seen other people talk about, Little Phoenix, I want to give credit to some important leakers who gave us a lot of key details before I even made this video. People like Patrick Schur, who confirmed over a year ago for Phoenix the socket, PCIe 5.0, LP DDR5 and DDR5 support, Zen 4 core architecture, which by the way did start as 5nm, I was recently told before the design was ported to 4nm. And of course also thank you to Kepler L2 for confirming RDNA 3 in Phoenix, and AMD themselves for confirming that Phoenix was not a mid-range budget gaming APU, but a thin and light APU like what we see from Rembrandt. And then of course his usual executable fix has always been detailing many little details about all types of upcoming products, but he talked about Mendocino before a lot of other people, if not everyone else. And these people specifically that I highlighted today are some of the people that actually deserve credit, because they gave us, before other people, specific information that is proven correct. They didn't just guess a bunch of silly, wild ranges like 12 to 24 compute units, and the fact that it could use RDNA 2 or RDNA 3, which by the way are the only options for Phoenix that isn't a source if you just guess all upcoming GPU architectures and then say that's what Phoenix uses. These people deserve credit because you can tell that they were using specific information that hasn't changed before other people, and you guys should really follow them. But I didn't just bring up these other people and what they leaked to give them credit, although that is important. I brought it up just to kind of highlight why I haven't been rushing out some Phoenix leak until I had an entirely different APU to talk about first. It's because, honestly, we already knew most of what there was to know about Phoenix up until now, and I don't see a point in rushing out a leak with a wide range of performance and architectures it can use unless I'm sure. But now I know about an APU that I am very excited about that I, at least myself, haven't seen other people talk about yet. And I also see this as a great time to kind of get a lay of the land of what you guys can expect from upcoming AMD mobility products in the future. So I'm going to talk about that now, but first, an ad from a sponsor. This summer, whether you're getting exercise outside or finding ways to stay active indoors like me, it's always nice to have something around that acts as a quick and tasty meal that's also healthy, full of protein, and reasonably priced. For me, that's Vite Ramen, who is a sponsor of this piece of content. Vite Ramen is an American company that pays its workers fair wages and crafts a protein and nutrient-dense meal that takes minutes to make without sacrificing taste. In fact, it's even quicker now with Ramen Go, a product that offers the same calories and taste as their traditional V3 packages you're probably used to now if you're a follower of this channel, while allowing you to even more quickly make your food or bring it to work for lunch. And they keep updating their recipes, like the new V3 edition of beef pho, so you keep having fun new flavors to try. Click the link in the description and use the offer code BROKENSILICON to save 10% off a variety of different special bundles just for Moore's Law Set fans that include things like spoons, chopsticks, and more if you so choose. This is a great deal for you, and it helps support this channel tremendously. Seriously, I eat it. It's tasty, it's healthy, it's fast. They keep making even better and better recipes that are quicker and quicker to make, and it's reasonably priced. Try Vite Ramen today. All right. Before I get into Little Phoenix, I want to talk about the other upcoming AMD APUs coming out. Now, originally, this was like 3 slides, and it was going to be the whole focus of a video, but because not all of it's new information, I don't think I want to spend as much time on it as I originally intended to last month. However, I do think knowing what else AMD has coming out besides Little Phoenix lets you understand more comparatively how you should think about Little Phoenix. And so I still think I should cover it, especially because I want to clear up some misconceptions about how people seem to be perceiving these APUs right now. So first of all, Mendocino. 4 cores, 8 threads, Zen 2, 1 workgroup of RDNA 2. This comes from a distinct project designed to succeed Pollock. Now, Pollock is one of those APUs that tends to fly under the radar. It's its own die, its own small, super low performance die that's basically an offshoot of other bigger, more standardized APU variants. And so this was not a tweaked version of Van Gogh like one of my AMD contacts warned me about a month ago. This really was its own thing. And when it comes to clock speeds, I do know for a fact that Raphael's integrated graphics, which seems to be a similar IP block, clocks around 2.2 gigahertz. So because of that, I would expect Mendocino to clock to 2.2 gigahertz or higher if you really let it stretch its legs with its TDP. But I'm also being warned that you really shouldn't expect it to even hit 2 gigahertz in many configurations that are closer to 5 watts. Now, in this 4 to 6 watt configuration, I expect this to perform in gaming a little bit better than a Nintendo Switch, which doesn't sound great, I admit, but consider that this will be, well, using less than half the power in smaller form factors with a CPU that won't hold it back for running some games at least at a more consistent frame rate. So yeah, look, this will run older games at 60 hertz pretty well, but this isn't going to run any recent games. But above 2.2 gigahertz, I do think because it has half the bandwidth of the Steam Deck, way more than enough bandwidth considering it has a fourth the compute units, it could approach 35 to 45% performance. I don't know how often you're going to see a laptop actually use like a 15 or 25 watt version of this thing, but if you do see any of those, or if any of the handheld Mendocino devices actually let it use 15 watts, don't be surprised if this actually gets to around a 750, which is stronger than a Nintendo Switch by a commendable amount. Having said that, it's still much weaker than an MX150. So again, considering this is coming out in 2023, not a few years ago, this is not a AAA gaming APU at all. Now, the follow-up to Mendocino is, I have confirmed from multiple people, Sonoma Valley, and this has popped up in little leaks online as well. I'm told this is actually targeting 2024 for a release, but besides that, information is very scarce, and in fact, a couple sources, and some of these are my best ones, think it might get or already is kind of canceled, which, considering how long it's taking to come out, I could see why. So, I don't know. I don't think there should be a lot of fanfare around Sonoma Valley. I mean, if I were to speculate what it would use, I would say if they could get it out sooner rather than later, maybe they'll use like 6 nanometer version of RDNA 3, hopefully bump up the amount of work groups so that they can get to something that's over double the GPU performance of Mendocino with Zen 3 Plus, but otherwise it's probably just Zen 4 or Zen 4C on like a sub 100 millimeter squared die with 1 to 2 RDNA 3 work groups. And yeah, look, if they have a Zen 4 quad-core version or even just a Zen 4C version with 2 RDNA 3 workgroups on 4 nanometer, that would certainly probably be like 3 or 4 times stronger than what Mendocino has. But guys, that's still coming out in like 2 years from now. I don't think tripling performance of something that's crazy weak, launching it 2 years from now is going to make anyone that excited. Although I guess it would probably be better for its time than Mendocino. But yeah, so that's Sonoma Valley. Dragon Range, much more exciting. This is the 16-core, 32-thread Zen 4 smaller packaged version of Raphael that I've been calling Raphael H for a very long time for laptop. This is AMD being tired of Intel comparing their 95-watt H and HX SKUs to AMD's 35 to 54-watt chips. I've actually heard from AMD contacts that recently they're getting more and more annoyed at this and that this was a main reason they designed Dragon Range. You see, this APU, if you will, or let's just say SoC, this will be able to bring likely 5950X performance to laptops in thin, very thin and light 15-inch premium form factors if they use around 55 to 65 watts. But if they're allowed to use 95 watts, like half of the chips Intel uses to compare to 45-watt Rembrandt APUs, well, I mean, look, you're going to get better. You know, you clock Dragon Range to 95 watts. You're getting better than 5950X performance on laptop. And AMD has already used some wording that tells me they're very confident they're just going to take the mobile performance crown. And I do, again, think that this won't always be in the giant desktop replacement, which is really excited and will allow Phoenix to really occupy the niche it's meant to occupy. The one that Rembrandt really excels at, that 35 to 45 watt premium thin and light category of laptops. It is premium and it is thin and light. It is not some budget gaming savior. Now, it has 6 work groups, 12 CUs, 1536 stream processors. So I'm told that the way this works, and other people have been alluding to this, but that it is a doubling of stream processors per CU and that the work groups still only have 2 CUs per work group. Now, this doubling of SPs per CU, it also comes with a lot more doubled resources, if you will. I know it's an imperfect way to put it, per work group as well. The reason I bring this up is because, yes, it clocks faster, but do not expect it to necessarily have like a doubling of performance per clock per CU compared to RDNA 2, right? When Ampere doubled the number of CUDA cores, it did not double performance at same clock speeds. Now, I have been told that RDNA 3 is a closer to doubling of performance than Ampere, but it's still quite far away from doubling. So, in other words, when you look at that 1536 stream processor count for Phoenix, do not think of it like 24 compute units for Rembrandt. That is not what it is. That's not what it does. It is a different architecture. It is much higher performance per compute unit because it has a doubling of teraflops, but teraflops per FPS, if I may use that term, drops off just like Ampere, but not as much as Ampere. And while RDNA 3 clocks faster than RDNA 2, as I'm showing on screen, I don't want to say where I think any individual product will clock yet, and that's because it really does vary. Remember, RDNA 3 is going to be in 6 nanometer, 5 nanometer, and 4 nanometer products, and some of those products are monolithic, some of those products have infinity cache, some don't, some of them are MCM variants, some of them may have 3D stacking. So when you hear all of that, I don't know when AMD is going to be able to push these things fast. Do I think some RDNA 3 products could get above 3 gigahertz? I think so, but I don't know which products, and I don't know what the performance benefits or limitations are yet. So I'm not going to be one of those people that just says a bunch of stuff and hopes some of it comes true. I'm just going to leave it at that. Yeah, it can clock faster, but I don't know what the limitations are yet. And one limitation Phoenix has that I think not enough people are thinking about is it still uses dual channel memory, or a 128-bit memory controller, if you will. And this is a big deal, because if you're going to increase teraflops by 2x or more or something, and the overall gaming performance, if it had unlimited bandwidth, could almost double, well, it doesn't matter if you're still making do with Rembrandt amounts of bandwidth, because it doesn't have infinity cache, and although it does have increased L2 cache, which will help a lot, and it does have next-gen color compression to make do with less bandwidth, it's not like this is something that isn't going to hold back Phoenix a bit. And so I expect Phoenix, and this does come from being informed by a few people I've talked to have 60 to 80% more performance over Rembrandt. It does not triple the performance of Rembrandt like some people have been suggesting. What does this mean? Well, right now, you would be good to remember that Rembrandt isn't even as strong as a 1650. In fact, it's not even as strong as a 1650 Max-Q. AMD's used some, I would argue, misleading marketing to suggest it's around a 1650 Max-Q because you need to use FSR in 1080p low settings, which honestly, most people think looks like garbage. I actually think it doesn't look as bad as some people say, but it's certainly not ideal. I don't consider that the same performance as a 1650. It's really closer to the performance of like an overclocked desktop 1050 Ti. So if you add 60 to 80% more performance, I think you should expect this thing to perform closer to an RTX 3050 laptop. Now, I want to be clear about something here. I have heard of some people connected to AMD, not actually people who work at AMD, saying that they want to market it as having 3060 class performance. But the people I talk to at AMD think that's a bit ridiculous. And here's what I can say. I don't know if some people, whether at AMD or outside of AMD, whether it's like one of their partners like HP, might try to market that and then put a big old asterisk that says with FSR 2.0, with a 3060 that's using less energy than most 3050s. I've already covered this on Twitter, guys. If you clock a 3060 down to 60 watts, the first problem you have is finding any information on that performance because I can't find a laptop that uses that much energy. Almost every 3060 laptop actually uses more than 70 watts. And then when it needs to, pulls an additional 15 watts from the CPU. I only could find a 65 watt one that seemed to actually stick to 65 watts. And at those speeds, you're talking about not even 1660 Ti performance. You're talking about 1660 Ti laptop performance. So, well, some people may market it this way, and I can't say yet how it will perform on desktop. On laptop, I really feel AMD should be focusing on the fact that Phoenix should match mini RTX 3050 laptops. That's more honest, and that's still very impressive, right? That is keeping pace a little better with NVIDIA's GPU performance than what Rembrandt was able to do. Remember, Rembrandt's losing to 12 nanometer underclocked chips, from what, like 2018, 2019? If they can keep pace firmly above all of NVIDIA's MX cards, which this should be able to do, and even approach their lowest clocked 50 cards, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. There's no need to lie about 3060 class performance or mislead people who are buying your laptops. And again, this is not planned to be offered in budget laptops. It uses 4 nanometer. That's like almost double the cost of 6 nanometer. And although the die size, I'm told, should be a bit smaller than Rembrandt, that's not going to offset that size there, okay? So just remember that. And also, actually, before I move on to the last thing, remember that this isn't going to be competing with 1650 Max-Qs. This will be competing with 4 nanometer Lovelace, which is going to have no problem having its mid-range and even some of its lower-end chips and laptop beating Phoenix. Phoenix moves the bar forward in laptop performance, and I believe it does something that Rembrandt just barely fell short of. Doing 1080p, 45 hertz low gaming isn't that impressive, but I think Phoenix is going to lock in 1080p medium, and maybe even a little higher in some games, and that's really exciting. And I'm just throwing this in here because I want to make sure people notice I've said this. I confirm RDNA 3 desktop has a firm Q4 launch date in my recent May loose ends. So not this week, but I already leaked this a bit ago, and I'm going to have a lot more to say about RDNA 3 soon. As you can see from my Phoenix info, I'm starting to get really specific RDNA 3 info, and that means very soon I'll be able to do that updated RDNA 3 leak I believe a lot of you are waiting for. But before I do that, let us finally talk about Little Phoenix. Okay. Recently, I was made aware by a couple of sources that AMD is working on a new SoC directly referred to as a Van Gogh successor. This project began after Phoenix was late in its development cycle. The goal was to build an ultra-low power and compact version of Phoenix. In other words, it wasn't started at the same time Phoenix was started. Phoenix was nearing design completion and going into validation when they were like, okay, now take this and make it use like a third the energy as a Van Gogh successor. I don't have official code names yet besides Little Phoenix, but when I reached out to some AMD contacts, remember, not everyone at AMD knows every project. One of them actually told me that this isn't unheard of, right? Dolly was actually called Raven Ridge 2 internally at AMD for a while, and even on some websites they call it Raven Ridge / Dolly. So Dolly was basically a little Raven Ridge for a while, and this being called Little Phoenix, it's not that surprising. All right, early Little Phoenix specs. Right now, I'm told that the die is smaller than Van Gogh, which isn't unexpected considering I'm also told Phoenix is a little smaller than Rembrandt. 4 nanometer, 5 nanometer, much more expensive than 6 nanometer, so saving a little bit on die space makes sense, but it's still bigger than Mendocino, so it's going to be more expensive than Van Gogh, guys, but it's not going to be excessively more expensive because it does have a smaller die size. Now, Zen 4 is going to be used for the CPU architecture, 4 cores, 8 threads, honestly, as you would expect, and I believe that'll bring a 25 to 35% higher performance per clock for this CPU over what's in the Steam Deck that has Zen 2, and I do believe it should boost to 4 gigahertz. I'm not willing to confirm if it will boost higher than that. Obviously, it could boost to 5 gigahertz sometimes, but this is a more low-power mobile variant, so it might target its voltage at much lower clock speeds, where I hear that Zen 4 is actually more efficient than people expect compared to the desktop variants. Now, this has 4 work groups, again, just like Van Gogh, 8 compute units, but that equals 1,024 stream processors of RDNA 3. Again, per compute unit, RDNA 3 is much more powerful, but it is not double the performance at same clocks per compute unit. And it also still uses a 128-bit LPDDR controller. Now, if Valve chooses to use 6400 mega transfer per second LPDDR5, they'll get a 16% bandwidth boost, which isn't much. But keep in mind that LPDDR5X is coming, and I just don't know yet which one they'll decide to go with. I also cannot confirm what accelerators Little Phoenix comes with yet, but again, remember that I've leaked multiple accelerators in Genoa, and Robert Halleck has all but confirmed what I've said about the SDXI accelerator as well. So, all of that in mind, let me give you what I believe the performance of Little Phoenix, the likely successor to Van Gogh to go into the Steam Deck 2, is going to perform like. All right, so combining 25 to 35% higher performance per core, assuming 10 to 20% higher boost clocks than the 3.5 gigahertz boost clock of the Zen 2 CPU and the Steam Deck 1, I think we could see a 50% boost in CPU performance. Now, that depends on how hard they push the boost clocks. I'm going to talk about that more in a second. Keep that in mind. It's all dependent on if Valve wants higher performance more than longer battery. We'll have to see, and what accelerators they include, but either way, I do think this is going to perform similar to an R5 3600, which is more than enough for AAA games at 60 frames per second. I've been very outspoken that I have concerns about the Steam Deck 1's ability to run even modest AAA games long term. The consoles have 8 Zen 2 cores. The Steam Deck doesn't even have higher clocks than the PS5, and yet it has half the cores. That concerns me. With this massive performance per core increase and higher boost clocks, I do believe that the Steam Deck 2, should it use Little Phoenix, is going to be able to run AAA games for the remainder of this generation pretty easily. And, well, let's get into what I think the GPU will perform like. At face value, this GPU almost looks a little disappointing, right? The same amount of compute units as what's in Van Gogh, and we know it's going to be a little more constrained by clock speeds than Phoenix will. However, I think that people need to remember that Van Gogh is probably very compute starved, all right? Consider that the Steam Deck has nearly the same bandwidth as Rembrandt, despite having 2/3 the compute units. It has a 128-bit memory controller just like Rembrandt, and so I actually suspect the Steam Deck 2 might not need much more bandwidth. I would suggest that Little Phoenix could, if Valve wanted to, and I am not confirming this, but if Valve wanted to, or if someone wanted to put this in a premium thin and light laptop, that they could double performance over how Van Gogh performs in the Steam Deck 1, they really push it in that 15 to 25 watt category and gave it the fastest memory on the market. However, there's a very real chance Valve could choose to save money and battery life by using 5500 mega transfer per second memory again and constrain it to a lower CETDP. Keep in mind why they might do this. They might say, well, if we just actually make it use a little bit less energy than what the Steam Deck 1 uses, we can use a smaller and lighter heat sink. We can turn down the fan speeds. Both of those help with weight and battery and battery life, and then they can use that extra space if they make the heat sink, the fan maybe a little smaller, to have a bigger battery as well, and then they can just keep using the same memory they probably bought in bulk. And again, I think that Van Gogh's massively compute starved, having that much bandwidth for just 8 RDNA 2 compute units. So we'll have to see which way they go, people. For now, I'm just going to advise you guys to expect the Steam Deck 2's performance to be similar to Rembrandt. Now, if they really go for efficiency, that means, closer to like a 6800U or 6600U, but in a smaller form factor than most laptops that have those CPUs. But if they push it as hard as they do in the current Steam Deck or even harder, I mean, honestly, they could really lock in 60 hertz gaming with that display, and they could probably even push it to 900p if they wanted to. Finally, I expect this to have a late 2023 launch. For the target, Phoenix launches early next year. This is going to take a little more time to validate and get out there, and we'll have to see which customers bite. The fact that AMD hasn't talked about this in their financial analyst day as well tells you that this is a more custom product for very specific customers. This isn't something they're probably just going to throw to everybody. So a lot of when it comes out is going to hinge on when probably people like Valve or maybe Microsoft and a Surface Book actually want to use it. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was actually just a 2024 product. All right, guys. So there you go. To me, it's very clear that Little Phoenix, should Valve choose to use it, especially if sooner rather than later, it will allow them to finally get what I believe a lot of people think they were promised with the Steam Deck. At the moment, the Steam Deck is able to run AAA games with sacrifices, but they're sacrifices a lot of people have been willing to make, to be honest. Having said that, before the Steam Deck came out, I think a lot of people acted like it was going to bring enthusiast mobile gaming performance to a handheld. But the fact is that handheld was huge, and you still had to run a lot of games at 40 frames per second. That's not to say the Steam Deck isn't impressive nor important. It's very important, especially for Linux adoption. But it is to say that I feel like it didn't quite hit that mark of perfection. And I think that Little Phoenix is going to hit that mark. I think that we're going to see at least 50% higher performance over Van Gogh, up to double the performance depending on how Valve configures it, and that should be just enough to not game at 40 frames, but to game at 60 frames, and maybe even have a little bit of performance left over, not to go to 1080p in a handheld, but maybe to 900p. And at that level, that pixel density, that locked 60 hertz frame rate, that's when I'm really excited about truly portable enthusiast desktop gaming. Locked 60, decent clarity, and not having to make as many sacrifices. So, yep, I can't wait to hear more about this product. I will tell you guys more when I hear it. So, yeah, I guess make sure you subscribe to the Moore's Law Z YouTube channel so you don't miss those upcoming leaks. Ring the bell button, tell your friends about us, like the video, subscribe to Broken Silicon on your podcast app of choice, and consider supporting us on Patreon, where you'll get early ad-free access to Broken Silicon, the ability to ask guests and me questions, the ability to interact in the Discord, free questions on loose ends, and of course, the ability to listen to Die Shrink, a podcast that is only for patrons. We have an extra long one coming up with a 6G expert talking about the future of wireless this Friday. So I'll be on vacation this Friday. I figured my patrons could use basically a free Broken Silicon to listen to while I'm not working. So that's really exciting for those who want to subscribe and listen to that there. But otherwise, to everyone else who made it this far, thank you for watching.